Welcome back from that quick break. This is the 3 Business TV3 Thought Leadership Series, and we're talking about the economic self-governance, the state of affairs that we find ourselves in as a country, and then also what's happening to the financial sector. Extremely important because if the Bank of Ghana is a lender of last resort and it finds itself in this situation, it's a big worry for the people who are watching this particular space, and especially because of how it also impacts on the confidence in the financial sector, taking into consideration how we have, for the past few years, traveled the path in the financial sector with the banking closures and also the impact of the DDEP and what we are seeing now. And in studio with me, we've been talking about leadership, Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, and then also Professor Kwame Pianim and Pianim, our main speaker for this session. And joining us now is Professor Godfred Bokpin. He is a professor of finance at the University of Ghana. Thank you so much, Professor Godfred Bokpin, for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we went for the break, you had to make a point about the issues of leadership that Dr. Nyaho was saying.
The point I was going to make is that it is very important that all of us as Ghanaians realize we are part of the leadership. You know, when something is happening in Ghana and somebody makes a comment, absolute silence. Nobody goes to support them when they are being maligned and being insulted. And I think that it is important that we don't think there's a leader somewhere. We invariably look at the top. One of the things I want to talk about is that the mistake we've made is that we are building the house from the top. There's no foundation. We had a very strong local government. When Nana came, he said, okay, let us elect the district chief executives. The district assemblies are supposed to be the implementing units of the development plans. Unfortunately, we think having a district is just a building and a district chief executive. That's not it. It's supposed to be economically viable, but we don't have, we've multiplied them. We are 32 million people. A district economically viable should not be less than 2 million, 3 million. And that's what we're looking at. So now our 16 regions should probably be the districts if we want to have economically viable units. So there will be leaders at the grassroots there. And if you have a district chief executive, a district chief executive, Amansie, he is district chief executive, this place. We are both Ashantis.
That's right.
The tribal element is completely gone. When I get my money from the district assembly fund, and you say buy furniture, and I use the money to hire the local carpenters to make wood, and he uses his to come to Accra to buy plastic furniture imported from abroad. And they give me the money for the school feeding program. And I ask the women, the farmers, to produce and feed the children. And he goes to buy his from Accra, delivered and get his 10%. Next time, they are not voting for him. So an important part of leadership we've left behind at the grassroots there. And if they were responsible for sanitation and water, they will not go on. But we sit in Accra, the radio station, everybody is talking about macroeconomics and the top there. The real problems are down there.
No.
They'll be solved. They say, why are the chiefs quiet? How can the chief go and try to stop Galamsey with people who have guns? And some of the Chinese there who are working, they are also victims. They've been brought, their passports are taken away from them. Some of them are dying from malaria, diphtheria. So if you empower the grassroots, the roads, feed the roads, they'll be responsible. They won't let the roads go bad. They won't let the water go bad. Soon, outside, they are talking about climate change and how to. We are here destroying our waters and rivers. That's what I wanted to talk about. All of us, the traditional rulers, the religious leaders, when people come to power, the people who spoil them are traditional rulers, are religious leaders.
Thank you.
They go, they are worshiping them. I was in a church once. I had to walk out.
Why?
Because we're then saying that the ministers are too many. And the priest was quoting the Bible. When somebody wanted to build, they say, no, he build, God bless me. You want 300 ministers, appoint them. He said, we are choked. There's too much money. We have to examine the expenditure. So it's all of us Ghanaians. People say that we want those things. We don't. The politicians come and tell us, you want this, we are going to give it to you. So that we have projects and they come back. The Bank of Ghana thing, my problem is this. It's one of the few institutions that has some credibility outside. The mistake Bank of Ghana did, and I think it was a big one, when they felt that the government has run out of money, it was going bankrupt, what they should have done was call the chairman of the Finance Committee in Parliament, the minority spokesman, to lunch and tell them, this is where we are. If we don't print the money and give it to them, there will be teachers, people on the streets. The Fourth Republic will be dead. We want to maintain the democratic dispensation. What we are going to do, we are going to give money. If President Kufuor and Paul Akwa had not capitalized Bank of Ghana, we wouldn't have had the money to do what we are doing. So the crisis we are in is not small. Ghanaians are patient. For one of the times, the IMF managing director told us, you are in big crisis. You are not different from Sri Lanka.
That's what he said.
People are always surprised. When Kwesi Botchwey was trying to raise electricity price very high, the IMF guys told him, don't do it. There will be crisis on the streets. Kwesi Botchwey said, we'll try it, because sometimes we hide behind the IMF to do the difficult thing we want to do that we are afraid to do. We did it. The IMF guy was surprised. He said, nothing happened. There wasn't a whimper when the prices went up. In other places in Asia, they would have come with claps out. Yeah. So what we are saying is that the crisis we are in now is difficult. Historically, there's never been any country which has gone this way that has survived, because it hasn't happened. I don't know of it. When the UK had war, they issued bonds, consols. It took about 40 years, 50 years. Every British man, even Collins, were prepared to buy it as an act of patriotism.
Yeah.
But which act of patriotism am I going to do to contribute to bonds? Look, I was a young officer in the Ministry of Finance when we were trying to encourage people to put their monies in the banks. Story. This Bush Ashanti man goes to put his money in the bank. He goes there, put it there, the guys come, they put it on the other side, and as though they are giving him a piece of paper, they've taken your money. Then the other girl, somebody has come to cast some money, so she can't. Misika no, yes, you try, so we did. Misika no. That's my money. Yeah. Bring it back. It took us a long time to get them to put it there. Now we've made it impossible. That's why people have money in their houses. It's the only place that is safe. The banks are not safe. And we said, open a bank account, put your dollars there so that when you are traveling, you can take a little bit and go and spend it. You say, I can't do that. I leave it in the bank outside. When I get to New York, I get to London, I sign a check and collect my money and spend. Why are we reversing that? So the problem that Bank of Ghana should have told people and said yes. And once they've told you in confidence, You can't go and talk about it outside.
So that meeting that you were expecting that the central bank should have
They would have done
convened.
it. They didn't do it. They kept defending. We haven't printed anything. Yeah. That's bad.
And this was done without parliamentary approval from what we do know now. And so are you saying that meeting could have averted what we are seeing now, or they were just supposed to alert the finance committee chair that, you know what, we're going to print money?
Yeah.
Was that really the solution?
We are going to print money. And because, look, if you are printing money, if what is being said is that you are printing money, and that is causing the inflation.
Yes.
Why are you increasing the interest rate?
Which is impacting on the private sector.
Because you increase it when it is the private sector that will be doing it to inflict pain on them. So your monetary policy rate is 30%. You know, that policy rate, all that it says is that, to us, be careful. We don't trust Minister of Finance. It's like Minister of Finance is pouring water on the floor. Bank of Ghana has a mopping it. And they say, these guys, they are going to increase pouring the water, so I'm mopping it. That's all that the monetary policy rate tells us. Means we don't trust them. But you are the guy who is now putting the money there. So why are you increasing the monetary policy rate?
How bad is the situation? Especially because now, I mean, you talk about the Bank of Ghana and issues of credibility. We've seen what's happened to the commercial banks and the impact that this financial sector cleanup and so on has impacted on the confidence in the sector. Now, this is the regulator also finding itself in this situation of violating laws that they actually punish the commercial banks for. How dire is this?
It is very difficult. The Romans had a saying, who guards the guardians? You know, you put at the gate of Rome. The gate on the financials of Bank of Ghana, insurance company. So if they cannot maintain a certain level of prudence, that's why I'm saying that the problem is dire. And some of these things should not be public discussion. It should be behind the scenes, because the people outside, they are taking a look at us. Normally, when you have an IMF program, immediately you sign. The big boys are in the room. The boys will behave. The economy starts picking up. Investors start coming in. Now, it's not happening. Why? Because the problem, as I see it, historically, I've been seeing it before anywhere in the world.
Not seen it before. What's happening in this country?
What is happening in this country and how we are going to get out of it. The business community doesn't seem to realize that, because when they were negotiating, the Association of Bankers was negotiating for the banks. Are they shareholders in the banks?
No.
A lot of our associations, AGI, all this, they don't have enough research capacity. Economists, accountants, helping them to confront government when government is making the policies. And the policies are dire. If you take a look at our banks now, a lot of them are insolvent. Why? Because they've been given a haircut. Why? Because government overborrowed. And the contractors, if you see some of the banks were getting into trouble.
Yes.
Because they lend money to contractors. The government doesn't pay the contractors. And then where does it end up? Then the banks, they say, write it off. You are impaired. Go and look for new capital. And when you are looking for new capital, they say, okay, you have 3 months. If I'm an outsider and want to buy the bank cheap, you say I have 3 months, I'll wait until 3 days before the 3 months and say, I'm buying your bank at 50% of your
the stated capital.
Normally, you buy it, you take a look at it about 2 times, 3 times the assets that they have. But they want to buy it cheap. So we are in a crisis. And the earlier we acknowledge that, and that's all Ghanaians, tighten your seat belts because we are in a crisis. It will be better for us.
Professor Boppin, so I'm bringing you out this one because if you look at the reasons why the Bank of Ghana went on the path of shutting or closing down some financial institutions, including commercial banks, withdrawing licenses. You talk about issues of corporate governance and non-performing loans. issues about credit risk and related party lending. Those are some of the reasons why they closed down the banks in about 2-3 years ago. They are committing the same sin, are they not?
Except that they are the central bank.
And so they would go scot-free?
The law, I'm not a lawyer. Sometimes you feel that the law is made for others. Okay. And therefore, in terms of how we respect the law, has some kind of levels. And I agree with our senior economist here. I respect him a lot. It was very clear to me from the third quarter of 2021, and if you check the trajectory, you will see that our posture changed, how we saw government and government policy, especially from the third quarter of 2021. Our conclusion, I wasn't the only person, together with the money guys, Bryce Simmons and the others, that look, Ghana was heading dangerously, that something needed to be done. Okay. And we felt that the optimal time for us to have reached out to the IMF was actually from the third quarter of 2021. We want to look at the fiscal vulnerabilities. We want to look at the measures you had put in place. We want to look at how we monetized COVID, right? I'm saying that we commercialized the virus. Okay, so the abuse and all of that, coupled with 2020 election, it was very clear. And more so because we had been there before. You look at how we operationalized the 2012 election and the fiscal deficit after the 2012 election. The deficit was more than 12%, around 12.1%. The current account deficit was in double digits, right? In fact, this money printing didn't start today. It didn't start today. No. And just as Mr. Pianim said, you know, for inflation targeting, which we had adopted during the time of Dr. Polakwa. Okay, unofficially, we started inflation targeting March 2002, officially 2007. One key requirement for inflation targeting to be effective is fiscal discipline. Indeed. Once you deny the central bank fiscal discipline, there is no way they can deploy monetary policy effectively to bring down inflation and engineer growth. You can't undo this. Now, what did we do? Because of the fiscal dominance, and I'm saying this so that we're able to talk about it objectively, because when it comes to this money printing, there is none holy. No, not one. Not the NDC, not the MPP. Because we saw abuse towards the end of 2011, all the way to 2012. The deficit financing from Bank of Ghana in 2012 was more than 40%. Meanwhile, at that time, the Bank of Ghana Act only allowed 10% of the previous year's fiscal revenue. That's what is in the Bank of Ghana Act. Look, as a developing country, we certainly can't do without some level of financing from the central bank. Because the way we see the central bank is more than just being policy sovereign. It's more than just being doing policy, monetary policy, or regulation. They also embrace certain developmental posture.
So this zero financing that the IMF is...
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable?
It's not sustainable. We have to design something that works for us.
But the IMF saw something. That's why they even made that demand, does it not?
Because of the inflationary pressures, right? And Mr. Pianim spoke about that. You are trying to increase your policy rate to contain inflation, and you are effectively undoing that by injecting more liquidity through printing. That's a negative sign. Right. Okay, so if you want to, you are looking, the IMF comes in within the shortest possible time and they want results. So you are looking for the most effective instruments to use. And what is the most effective way to do this, bring inflation down, go to zero financing? You know, it's just like the way we do wage increment. A certain level of wage increment with some level of productivity will not cause inflationary pressures. Right. Beyond a certain point, you begin to see wage inflation. So a certain level of financing by the central bank, especially if it goes to the productive sectors of the economy, certainly the inflationary pressures will be mute if the fiscal side is responding appropriately. Now, what do we see in Ghana? And I learned to what Mr. Pianim said. Instead of looking at monetary policy and fiscal policy being complementary to each other, we have deployed monetary policy as subordinate to fiscal policy. What have we done? What we have done essentially, and it's not just this regime, we are a bit concerned about what happened now because of proportionality, right? In terms of magnitude, what happened in 2022 is an outlier. It will take us more than 3 decades.
You mean?
Right? You know, Ghanaians have no idea where we are and where we are heading towards. And if we don't ask for the right leader, you know, in all of these things, because leadership first failed. Okay, and Ghana's problem is not economics. The textbook, there's nothing wrong with the textbook. We can contextualize the knowledge. Our problem is largely governance. It is the governance failures that is manifesting explicitly in economic mismanagement, financial improprieties, procurement breaches, and the rest of them. It's the governance. If the problem is largely governance, the solution cannot be financial or economic.
It has to be governance.
It must be governance. We have to reform. Look, Ghanaians, TUC, the rest of them, look, we can restructure our bonds on a weekly basis. If we don't solve the governance issue, we will come back to this table. What is happening right now, if you look at it carefully, what is happening is that since 1992, you see the governance cost rising, okay? And today, it's far better for you to join politics and break even than to be in private sector or in pure public service. That inequality is not good. Now, so you see, people are using their business to do politics, okay? People are willing to sacrifice for their political party than to sacrifice for Ghana. Because once the party wins, once you win power, you won everything. You've won the knowledge, you've won wisdom, you've won everything. But it doesn't work that way.
Based on your assessment
the
of
best idea may not be in the head of the head, right? We need everybody. So, but that's what is happening. So we need to come to the table in a certain national conversation and say that how do we make our democracy work for ourselves? Because as it stands now, the democratic dividend doesn't trickle down to the ordinary person. It doesn't. It doesn't. So we need to save Ghana's democracy from itself. That is different from proposing alternative. Democracy is not one size fits all.
Indeed.
How do we make it work for ourselves? And largely you want to come to the governance cost. Okay, you see what Tinubu is doing in Nigeria, right? He's also started appointing ministers like his colleague somewhere. You understand that? Okay. Okay, so the governance cost, governance reforms, which may also require revision to the Constitution and the rest of them, is very important because what has happened to Bank of Ghana, it could have happened to anyone who was there. Okay.
Anyone who was at that point in the central bank.
Let me tell you
could have been done differently.
The optimal thing for the governor of Bank of Ghana was to have resigned long ago.
Absolutely. The governor should have resigned long ago.
You've waited too long.
Absolutely.
And that would have sent the right signal. You know, when you said that call the minority, majority, and the rest of them, you want to come to the table and say there has to be some trade-offs. We'll do some printing, but on condition that you're also going to do ABC.
Exactly.
Look, in Côte d'Ivoire, in April 2002, the president of Côte d'Ivoire took a decision to reduce the number of ministers from 41 to 32. I'm talking about Côte d'Ivoire, our neighbors. Inflation in Côte d'Ivoire is around 3.2 or 3.5%. Of course, we can see marginality because of they use the pegged currency. The pass-through of exchange rate to price development is low compared to Ghana, and therefore their imported inflation and the rest of that, you see marginality. But you see that leadership we failed to respond. We failed to respond.
And that's what's continued to this point.
Yes.
You say, based on your assessment, it's going to take, what, 30 years for us to get out of this situation? At least 30 years.
Do you know what it means like to render the central bank balance sheet negative like this? We are exposed. As a country, we are exposed. Remember, the central bank is a lender of last resort. Let me give you an example.
Tell me.
You know, whilst the IMF was advising us to restructure our debt as a prior action, right? The IMF said that their debt, together with the World Bank, the multilateral debt, as at the end of 2022, the total multilateral debt owed to the IMF, the World Bank, and the other multilateral institutions was $8.8 billion. Then the IMF said that because they were the lender of last resort, their debt was not up for restructuring. Because as the lender of last resort, it was not good that their balance sheet would take a hit. Because if every country runs into trouble and all of that, where would they go to? They will go to the IMF. And therefore, they needed to preserve their balance sheet. Here, our central bank is the lender of what? Last resort. That principle didn't apply here. Now, because the government didn't make a lot of progress with the domestic debt restructuring, the first round, when we celebrated that it was successful, it was not. Because the eligible bonds at the beginning, December 5th, was $137 billion. By the time we're done with the first round, the universe of eligible bonds had reduced to 98 billion cedis. Out of that, we were only able to restructure 85% of that at various interest rates. So the average yield, coupon rate came to about 9.3%. So we had just restructured around 83 billion cedis of the total bonds. That tells you that we didn't get the fiscal savings that we wanted. So we knew that government would do a second round. They would do a third round. At that time, we knew that the cocoa bill, that was around 8.1 billion end of 2022. The local dollar-denominated component around $800 million. Talk about the pensions, 29.2 billion cedis. Then Bank of Ghana. As at the end of 2022, the exposure of the central bank to the government was 77.6 billion cedis.
77.6 billion.
Cedis. Okay, so now, at the end of the day, because we had an end game, fiscal sustainability, debt sustainability, IMF set a cutoff point, 2028. With the progress we had made, there was no way, and we knew that there was no way Ghana was going to attain the debt sustainability. So in all the configurations, we had to use Bank of Ghana's balance sheet as a shock absorber.
And the excellence that they had to take a residual position so that they would absorb
the
shocks
had to load
of the
the impact. So Bank of Ghana took a deeper haircut than any other investor.
And what's the consequence of that?
The consequence is that worthless balance sheet they publish.
It's a worthless balance sheet.
Your total liabilities far exceed your total assets. No, the losses. Even if you say the Bank of Ghana makes annual profit of, let's say, 1 billion cedis, certainly they won't recapitalize everything. You look at how long it will take. Typically, we would have said that the government would have to recapitalize the central bank. But the same government is already in a bailout arrangement. So the central bank needs a bailout from a government that is already in a bailout arrangement with the IMF and every Ghanaian. We are all bailing out the government. And you have bonds, you are bailing out the government by taking a haircut. You are a taxpayer. Look at the number of taxes. Today, if you stand, you are paying tax. If you sit down, you are paying tax. If you sleep, you are paying tax. Okay?
Where does that leave in the commercial banks? Because they're also now having to fall on the lender of last resort, who is also...
It means that they can't go there.
Needing a bailout
in all
from
of
the
this, it actually undermines the moral authority of the central bank in regulation and everything.
That means if any bank goes wrong, they cannot crack the whip.
Not that they cannot. When we talk about moral suasion and the rest of them, it's inbuilt. You understand? So you want, the essence of regulation is not like to hold a hammer and treat everything like a nail. The essence of regulation is to generate confidence, trust in the system, both from your actions and inactions and all of that. So I think let's not underestimate what has happened. We can sympathize with the situation because what you see on the books of Bank of Ghana is representative of the level of crisis that we are having to deal with. We haven't seen anything like that in our history. Okay, so we need to have a national conversation. One, because typically one of the institutions you want to protect is the central bank. We don't do politics with the central bank. And that is why I felt that the governors sold their birthright in the first place, right? They overexposed themselves to the central bank, okay? And therefore, we compromise the operational independence of the central bank. There's a history to this. Mr. Kwame Pianim spoke about it also, right? And all of that. You can examine the period that Dr. Polakwa was governor of Bank of Ghana. And you could look at the level of independence they fought for which also enabled them recapitalization, reforms, and all of that. We are not seeing that. We haven't seen that after that, okay? And therefore, this whole thing of fiscal dominance and the rest of them, we have to have a national conversation around this and see how we can protect certain national institutions. There are some institutions that when they mention, it gives hope to the country. You don't do politics. I don't think UK will do politics with University of Oxford. The way we are doing with our national institution, I don't think they will do politics with the Bank of England or the US Fed and the rest of. There are some institutions that when you mention, it gives hope that we can mirror. Okay, so to allow this cannibalization, I think it's beyond a certain point, we want to come home and say that how do we build forward better?
That's going to be the next question for you. But, Mr. Kwame Pianim, so, how has the weakness in the sanctioning regime also contributed to this gross violation of the law by the central bank, which has landed us in this deep crisis, which Professor Bokin says is going to take us at least 30 years to come out of?
I think we are talking about a national problem. There is a certain attitude in Ghana, take it or leave it. I'm the boss. And it happens. You go to any company, the messenger at the gate has the same attitude, take it or leave it. Goes all the way through and goes all the way up. I am in charge. Take it or leave it. I'm not listening to you. All our institutions is there. And I think it's time we come and say we want to be a country of laws, that the rules are there. The first thing we do, we've passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
Yes.
That we don't do. When the problem was coming, we suspended it. It's like building a car with brakes. You are going down the hill, and say, okay, I'll take off the brakes. It doesn't make sense, And if you have a fiscal, when IMF was talking about this zero lending, we told them we shouldn't accept it. You see, what people don't understand is this. The central bank is a bank for the government. So the government has accounts. When the government writes a check on an account, there's no money, Bank of Ghana put it in. So this is the level. So at a time when cocoa revenues, other revenues are not in, government doesn't have money. So we go under the curve. But the money starts coming in and it's going. So when you are looking at Bank of Ghana money creation or the money they are putting, you take the end of the year. What happened? So the law said, if Bank of Ghana is going to put in money, let it be 10% of the previous year's revenues, because you know it will come. Then we say, no, zero. You can't be zero. Because government revenues don't come all at the same time. They are looking for import, looking for this and that. So you need somebody, like I need my bank, to give me overdraft when I go down. The difference between me and the government is that when I look for the overdraft, Nyahu Tamaklo has money is not using, so it's there. They give it to me. Next time, maybe yours they give to me. Then when I pay, it goes out. For the government, you need to have somebody who smooths over. Otherwise, certain institutions that this is what is there. So if you say zero borrowing from the central bank, we say, does it make sense operationally? But we said, okay, we'll do it because we wanted the money.
That's right.
Then now we say, okay, we have rules. Government, you yourself, there are certain things you cannot do. We have 275 Ghanaians sitting in parliament. Your job is to make sure that every document the Minister for Finance brings, we have financial management regulations and allies. It's very clear. He has to come up with their sustainability. It's as if we found their sustainability only yesterday. It's always been there. You tell us what you are going to do with the money, how it's going to be repaid. 275. They do nothing. So it's not only the ministry that is at fault. Who were the parliamentarians? They were there, they were passing all the bills. We have a value for money audit. We have procurement. When we were setting up procurement, I told you I was self-mindful. I said, don't let us do it. The IMF didn't use a procurement act because it's just going to be one layer of corruption.
The procurement
So you
system.
go, you pay, it's given it to you. And then value for audit. The contractors know. Okay, value for audit, you go cut it by 5%, give us 3%, and lose 2%. So that's also another gutter for people collecting money. I prefer we don't have the Procurement Act. Throw it away. When the Minister for Transport goes to buy a Prado, and it costs him 100,000, and another person buys one, it costs him 80,000, you call them, why is yours different? Mm-hmm. Why do we need a whole procurement institution? And I see, before they even go for a bid, Minister of Health, they say, we are building this type of hospital. They have costed it and giving it to the contractors. The whole idea of tendering is that give the specification, the scope, and let the people come and bid. And then you say, I'm taking yours because it's cheaper. But the incentive system we've set up in the system is that the bigger the project, the better, because somebody is taking a 10%. So if the thing is cheap, they don't want it. If you are a small Ghanaian contractor, you're 10,000, 100,000, nobody's interested in paying it. So what we need to do, right, let's go back, all of us as Ghanaians. Mm-hmm. It's from our midst that the ministers come. And the strange thing is that somebody is your friend. He becomes a minister. You don't understand him anymore. You know, the only honest one I heard was my friend Kandapa, when he was in opposition. Electricity, very important. We destroyed our electricity system. He said whenever NDC wanted to raise the tariff, he said, no, we want affordability. Then when he became Minister for Energy, he was going to increase it. I said, but what happened? He said, well, when I was in opposition, I thought affordable was spelled with one F. But I know that it's spelled with two Fs. Why are we pampering Ghanaians who have access to electricity here by saying pay less than the cost? Why are we pampering Ghanaians like us? You close your eyes, you turn the pipe, the water is coming. In my village, they have to walk to go and get the water. And say, me, you are subsidizing me. Why? So I can use the water for my grass, to wash my car. When we are thinking of if development was from bottom there, you find out that the things we will be talking about is why is this water red? Why are there no gutters? I don't want Ghana to become a developed nation like some of the other countries we mentioned, where there's a flood and people are dying. You go to even Korea, some of the accommodation people are in. We don't want that. You go to America, a very rich country, and there are people walking on the street begging you to buy them lunch when there's enough money for everybody to go around. So I want Ghana, maybe we get to $3,000 per capita income. That's the only time when people are paying taxes and government revenue can begin to go up. We don't want to go more. We don't want to create billionaires. Maybe a couple of millionaires. And so we as a people have to think and say, do we have a vision? Lee Kuan Yew had a vision. He did. And Nkrumah had a vision. Came to one point, he knew he needed electricity to do whatever he wanted to do. But now, since then, in between, the vision, even when we have a vision, Ghana beyond it, fantastic vision to have rivaled Nkrumah's. One district, one factory. I didn't take it as a program. I took it as an agenda to say that we are looking towards a future where every district will be able to host a factory. Why are there no factories in a district? It isn't rocket science. There's no electricity. If somebody comes from England to set up a factory in my village, are there schools where his children can go to? There are no schools. When the wife turns or the spouse turns, will the water be flowing? No. When you close your eyes, you turn the electricity, you turn the knob. There will be no power going. There's no three-phase electricity. So the agenda was that by a certain time, every district you have all this infrastructure to do. The web, wide web, so that access to internet. You see what is happening to us here? It has to be affordable and cheap. If it's affordable and cheap, you and I can sit here and be watchmen in Los Angeles. He can sit here and do an operation, assist my daughter to do an operation there. Because you have access, it's broad, the broadband is good, it's accessible, and it's affordable. So let's now sit back. This crisis gives us an opportunity to change things. They say change the paradigm, change our mentality, and so on. The laws, if the laws are there, and you can be caught, and the police and the judiciary are doing their work, you can be imprisoned. Ghanaians were one of the most law-abiding. And they say when fish is gotten rotten, where does it start?
From the head.
From the top. If you have the top there, your boss is not taking a bribe, you'll be scared to take a bribe because they'll be monitoring you. So let's get the laws, let them be working, and when the judges are giving good judgment, let's support them. We overload the judiciary. There are political issues that should be solved politically among us. It shouldn't go to overburden a young and fledgling judiciary. We shouldn't do that. Let us solve our political problems ourselves. If things are going wrong, fortunately for Ghana, we are probably the only one with 3 living presidents. Can't they get together, call the chairman of their parties, the general secretaries, chairman of the Council of Elders, and say, let's sit down. This country is not going right. Or the traditional rulers, all of them collective, call the leaders and say, hey, we don't like the way this country is going. They are the people who own this land. But if you open your mouth and talk, you won't eat. So immediately you open your mouth, somebody's slipping bread into your mouth.
But that's another breath of it all. But you as well, and I'm sure Dr. Nyawo, you can say the same. Have you tried, for instance, reaching out to the president, tell him, look, all is not well, as you have been saying? What has been the response?
I'm surprised you're asking this question because I have done it. I remember that it's been, then let me make this clear here. I don't have anything against Akufo-Addo. I've known Akufo-Addo when we were small boys. I've studied him carefully. I was one of his stalwarts to get him to the forefront of the party. In fact, when Kwame was disqualified, and at the same time, Akufo couldn't beat Jerry John Rawlings in the first election, some of us decided, okay, if Kwame is not going, then let's back Akufo-Addo.
I see.
And we genuinely supported him. Without some of us, there was no way he could have won the election.
Really?
I'm not talking about the general election. I mean, win the position to lead the party. Now, when he became leader of the party, I noticed some changes in him. I said, oh, maybe it's true. He's not excited. He knows he's going to be president one day. But when we had a party congress in Tamale, and we elected a national chairman of the party, we elected a general secretary of the party, and also the second national chairman of the party were elected. These were elected people, not appointed by anybody. But not quite after that. These three guys were prevented from entering into their own offices at the party headquarters.
Why?
I'm saying something, so just listen to me. And the reason was quite simple, that they were hobnobbing with the NDC. Oh, how? I know that was not true. Then, like a joke, a mob was organized and chased them out of their offices. Then followed with dismissal or indefinite suspension from the party. Can you believe a democratic party? Honestly, I came out and gave it not only to the party, but to Akufo-Addo himself. And this is what broke the camel's back between myself and him. Then, a week later, the National Council met, and the discussion was that I should be suspended. Reasons were asked by certain people. They could not come out with a reason. But one gentleman who was then the regional minister of Greater Accra, I think he's even passed on now, he boasted that he could sign the letter because the top couldn't sign my suspension letter. So they brought it down to the regional level at Accra, where we have struggled to build years ago. And then he came out with a letter that I have been suspended from the party indefinitely, just like they did to the national chairman. And the reason was, of late, I have been coming out with statements that are not in conformity with the party's policies. Can you believe this? So I said, oh, if that be the case, then we shall fight on. Because I joined that party, I believe in it because the people like Kwame Pianim, they believe in democracy. Look, we were having a congress one time. I don't know if Kwame probably can remember. But then Darocha was the head of the party.
Right.
Then Kwame came to sit with me. We were chatting. Then B.J. Darocha was having an argument with the section of the people. Then Kwame said, let me go there quickly before they swallow B.J. He went to solve the problem.
I see.
You see? Now, the moment I took that stance that I believe in, that let me speak my mind.
That's right.
I don't care. After I've been to prison twice. Not because I stole anybody's property, but because of this nation, Ghana. What have I got out of it? Nothing. He went to prison over 10 years. Just imagine it all. 10 years in prison. Plus, I left him in Sawam.
Right.
I went to Britain. When I came back, he's been sent to, is this Sopon or where? Anomabo. I drove to Anomabo to go and visit. I mean, it's so pathetic. And then, when you think you are struggling so that this nation goes forward, younger people who are coming, instead of following the footsteps of such brilliant giants in the party, you see them rather looking for money.
When you reached out to the president with your suggestions, what was the response?
I didn't reach out to him. After the elections, or before the election, a couple of hours before the elections, I have even retired to bed when my boy told me that he said a bell rang. So I said, well, he should go and find out who that was. He said, the man claimed he's a journalist. That was on the 6th December 2016. So I said, should I talk to this journalist or not? Then something told me, talk to him. So I got up, got my rifle. I don't take chances in life, you know. Brought the rifle. He, of course, the boy didn't see it. I sat down before he came in. So I had the rifle by my side. He didn't see it. But when he came, meek looking, even if he comes to Fiscal, he can never bring me down. Well, you asked about elections in this country since the time of Kwame Nkrumah and how Kufuor managed to, And I said, Kufuor listens. I said that.
Kufuor listens.
Because Kufuor was able to come to power because he listened. The first round, he couldn't get it. It was the second round, if you remember.
Yes.
He was able to convince the other smaller parties. And that was what brought us the victory that we had for Kufuor to become leader. But even Kwame criticizes anybody. That doesn't mean he hates you. So when it got, then he posed a question on Akufo-Addo, how do I see the coming elections? And I made it plain. I told him, look, young man, if you guys voted Akufo-Addo in, the sort of, I can't even quote myself now. I said, the bitterness that you have, you will never forget.
Why did you say that?
Why did I say that? Because I know he can't handle this country.
You knew then that he can't handle this country.
Look, I knew straight after the dismissal of Paul Afoko, when they have fought him, yet the boy won the elections. I knew that my friend has shifted from the democratic path. Such a person can never run this country. This country, you know somebody who's knowledgeable and at the same time will be in position to think and handle the country carefully. And me, my target was him. And the Supreme Court, was it Chagan who was I think Chagan was somebody. They disqualified him. And it's so painful because this man went to prison because he was trying to unseat a military government, which I have done before. I, myself, and three other officers wanted to unseat General Chiampo in 1977. 77. And that landed us in prison for 2 years plus. That destroyed everything I have, destroyed my family, everything. So how can Akufo-Addo, when we have fought, to get, then not quite long after that, Rawlings came in. My God, another problem. I left this country, was out in the US for 4 solid years. I came back. I thought maybe things might have cooled down a bit. No. Not quite long after, I went in again. You follow me?
Yes.
So
right.
I have studied my friend, and I know that he is not a Democrat, as he claims to be.
President Kufuor is not a Democrat?
He's not. He is not. He can come and challenge me. I say he's not.
Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, I have my guests. We'll go to the guest in studio. I have the Association of Ghana Industries and also the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry as well. And the way forward, really. There have been suggestions by Kwame Pianim and Professor Bobkin, and then also Professor Kwame Pianim and Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo on the way forward. What has to be done differently to get different results? Now to my guest in studio. Let me start off with the AGI.
Yeah, so Adubia.
Adubia.
Yeah, Adubia Sebabwaji for AGI. I must say that for me it has been a history lesson. We've learned quite a lot, and so much have been said during the discussion. And so we don't intend going repetitive and reiterating what has been said earlier. However, as industry, the way forward is to just caution governments that even as individuals, we ask for feedback. We ask for constructive feedback. And so when some of these feedback come, it should not be taken as an attack, but rather a constructive review for government to put us back on the right path. And then again, I think from what has been discussed so far and what we know, after Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, we haven't really seen any industrialization drive for Ghana. We have had statements of hope, giving indications that we would want to industrialize. But each time we say that, we rather see policies that contradict that very assertion. And so we are hoping that with this, where we find ourselves, if there's any truth in the statement that necessity is the mother of inventions, then we expect that with this obscure situation we find ourselves in, we should rock the boat and take that bold decision to industrialize our nation. Because if private sector is the engine of growth, then we need to support private sector, we need to support industrial sector to be able to produce and help with the fiscal revenue. Now, with where we are heading to, we realize that most of our effort is rather being put into revenue mobilization as against expenditure rationalization. And so we expect that if Cote d'Ivoire could reduce their ministers from 41 to 32, 40, we have 100 and what? Or we have reduced, I have lost count. I have actually lost count.
It's over 80.
80.
Yes.
We can reduce further. We are in this all together. And if we, as industries, we are suffocating, we are crashing. Some of industries are folding up. Let's not forget that Ghana is not the only nation one can invest in. And so even if we have political stability to attract investment, there are other options. And I must confess that some companies are looking at our neighboring countries where they have manufacturing concerns to rather relocate because the environment here is not helpful. And so we should take that bold decision and do the right thing. I would also want to talk about the bribery and corruption. Sometimes we make it seem as if it's a myth, but we know it is not a myth, it's a reality. And way back, while we were preparing for this, I saw an old paper posted, 1971, Monday, March 22, 1971. And this is Dr. Buzia. I'd like to read it. He says, and this is the paper, the heading is Bribery, Our Main Problem, says Buzia. He said, bribery and corruption have eaten so deep into the very fabric of the society that when you put anybody in position of trust, he or she uses that position to amass wealth. Ghana, he said, was faced with the task of rebuilding the nation and asked how he could build the nation alone if the people continue to be selfish and dishonest. Reiterating his call on Ghanaians to discipline themselves, the premier deplored the way and manner Ghanaians spent all their money on drinks. So we started drinking not today. It's been there for ages. Corruption and bribery started not today. 71 till now is 52 years. And so if we sit and we still talk about corruption, it means that indeed it is a problem and we have to look at it. Now we realize that with our projects, we are so much interested in big projects like Mr. Kwame Pianim said, with procurement. And what goes with procurement? We heard it was kickbacks, now it is front cake, it is back cake. And so what we want to say is that if there is no expectation of coming back to say thank you, there will be no allocation made in contracts. So we should change. What we see is more of a reflection of our society. This is what Ghana has become. Because even at the lower levels, when somebody gives you a job, they expect you to come back to say thank you. Some institutions, some industries are making efforts. If you go to the banks, you can see posters there that thank you is enough. It's about time we say thank you is enough. And when we are doing projects, we should consider the nation Ghana. Because if the mess we find ourselves in is going to take about 30 years for us to fix, then I don't know what we are leaving for the next generation. And so we should look at that and equally work on our raw material exports. Fortunately, I saw an article yesterday, Daily Graphic, President saying that he's moving from raw material exports and retail trading to modern exports, something of the sort. We export cocoa. We export bauxite. Meanwhile, we need aluminum in this country. And then we import the ingots. We export rubber. But we need rubber products in this country. We import the granules after the rubber has been processed to use for manufacturing. How can private sector, how can industries make it?
Right.
So let's take advantage. And finally, coming from the automotive sector, it would be disastrous for me not to mention that with the auto policy and how we have started with assembly plant, I think it's about time we start considering the local content.
Right.
We have rubber, we can go into tires. Professor Frimpong Boateng mentioned the lithium is another opportunity, and we have glass. Finally, my statement is that government should liaise with academia. We have so many people in Ghana with doctorate degrees. Correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Bokpin and Dr. Edouard Nanientwi. Doctorate is a research program. When they do the research, what happens to them? They sit on our shelves and gather dust. Government should liaise with academia, use the research, and let's use it to fix the nation Ghana. Thank you.
Fantastic. Please, let's put our hands together for the AGI, Association of Ghana Industries. Also, I'll come to the National Chamber of Commerce and Industry shortly. But on the crisis, because everything that the AGI is concerned about is hinged on how to get out of this crisis situation that we find ourselves in. You've talked about the central bank governor should have resigned or gone a long time ago. Zepianim, in ensuring that this does not happen again, so that there's some level of accountability, would you also go on the same path, that someone needs to be held responsible? In the mind of Professor Bokpin, the governor should step aside. Would you also ask same?
No. First of all, having studied the dossier well enough, I believe that people should be allowed to grow. You make a mistake, making a mistake should not be fatal if you learn lessons from it. Okay, in Ghana, we are too used to getting rid of people, you know. Age comes with experience. You've seen it before. A lot of people, they think things are new. If the representative from AGI had not read that paper, she wouldn't have known, because we are not teaching our history. Buzia admitted it. The current generation, we don't admit things. And worse for us,
That's right.
you know, you have the social media, which reverberates and expands things. So a little thing becomes very big.
And that's where the concern is, that the Bank of Ghana is saying that this is as a result of the DDEP, what they are going through now, which quite clearly all of you have proved that that is not really the reason why we are in this particular crisis and this situation that we find ourselves in.
So you are there. Let us all admit. And the first time the Minister for Finance admitted that we are in a crisis was during this statement he read to Parliament. Before that, we were not. It was COVID. It was Ukraine war. If planting for food and jobs, the Minister for Finance had put the money there and we have planted, maybe you and Prof eating bread for breakfast. Nyaho and Frimpong Boateng may be happy with their banku and some fish.
No, I want to join them.
You want to join them?
for that breakfast.
So the Russia-Ukraine war will not have any effect on us because the maize will be there.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
If all the time we're talking planning for food, fertilizer, we had used the gas or the cocoa house for fertilizer, it won't affect us for 7 years. I was shocked when the government came in, they were going to change from the gas bill to come, and then they started saying, we are importing 400 million, this and that. What was happening in the 4 years? We've been saying that a long time ago. It's action. You know, and I think, you know, Frimpong Boateng's statement has not even sunk in on us. You invest in people, not in projects. The items that are sitting on the desk in CSIR. We made proposals once. If you're a professor, you are working for CSIR, there's something lying there. You want to take that job and commercialize it. Exim Bank, Agri Development Bank, Ghana Commercial Bank should finance you. Get 2 other people to join you. We get you out. You are creating jobs. When you sit and you close down a bank, do you know how many people you've sent? About 300 people have become jobless. It's not only that. A whole lot of areas. Now, for the young people in Ghana, we have people who are talented. Soccer, correct? We have people who are talented. Boxing, tennis. You see these young people going to play, to exercise, 6 a.m. on the turf thing that Magdan had built. And they are enthusiastic. They are going hungry. Morocco, their Minister for Finance, Minister for Sports, you see how well they are doing there. You feed them. There's a doctor looking after them. They are physios, telling them how to heal very quickly to go back. Millions can come. When this guy who did malaria, he was trying to add an app where you get any drug, you just put in the thing and then it will be told whether it's genuine or not genuine. My friend, the name has just slipped, old age.
That is, I think it's
he's now on Imani.
Bryce Simmons.
Bryce Simmons.
Yes.
If Ghana has supported Bryce Simmons and all the WHO medical things that we use, everybody is approved or that we are using, billions will be coming, will be more than cocoa. If we support some of the young people, and a lot of things are happening. So let's take the crisis. Forget about those who are supposed to have made mistakes. Young people say, I'm going to help. In my village, they say, we are very when you rush into the war, you die before the war starts.
But
fortunately, the governor is there. Let's say you made a mistake. If he made a mistake, how do we correct it? He's the one who can correct it. So let's use, people say, but you resign. I could resign. Why? I had a job at the UN. I could always go back. But I don't think I might have been that bold and brave if I didn't have a job. So let's make sure that the private sector is strong. Once we build a strong private sector, and you don't need a job from the government to survive, a lot of people will become courageous and speak their mind. So let's start now. How do we move from where we are? Let the bygones be bygones. How do we really get a Bank of Ghana that is operationally independent? Yeah, Safamafo fought for it. Bank of Ghana to be independent. Say, yeah, what are you talking about? The politicians who are facing election, you think they are less concerned about the people than a governor who is sitting in some air conditioning? He said, no. He was trained by the chairmen as a banker. He says, no, you need central bank independence. It's the history of the Germans after the Second World War. So they trusted the Germans. They trusted their governor of the federal bank better than they trusted the Minister for Finance. You take education.
In England.
Yeah.
The Bank of England.
But then see, they can be controlled by the politician. But this one, when you are independent, it doesn't mean you don't consult. There are 2 independent institutions in Ghana. Bank of Ghana, the PURC, Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. When they are making their decision based on technical factors, they don't consult anybody. But you can also have that independence and self-censor yourself. So being independent doesn't mean you don't consult, you consult. But you then come back to the human being. Is he strong enough to say no when things are going wrong? Or you just roll over? And all of us as Ghanaians will talk, mental attitude, change your this and that and that. It's not going to change until we say we are investing in people. What can you do?
But to the likes of, Professor Bokun is not alone in this call for people being held responsible for the crisis that we find ourselves in now, so that it doesn't repeat itself? Because there's a history to where we are now, but the situation has aggravated to this point we haven't seen in our history before, just as you have indicated. So in taking responsibility, I recall some time ago you asked that the finance minister should resign, right?
It was on a different level. You see, my problem with the Minister for Finance, and it's not personal, you know, in Ghana, when you raise the thing, it's personal. First of all, borrowing for the government, for Ghana, and you and your company personally benefiting. It means you may not need the money, and you are borrowing it just for yourself, okay? So that was my problem. And then populating the financial service sector with its people from data bank and so on. That was wrong. And then nepotism, you know. And that's what I was talking about, that we need to change it. It has never happened before, that the minister is in place and is doing that. That was my problem. With the central bank, my issue is that we started wrongly when we said zero lending. And I said, when the politicians are talking, and I always tell my friends in Bank of Ghana, do not respond when the opposition leader or the minority finance spokesman is speaking. They are not talking to you. Let the politician talk. When the people want to hear from you, they will call you to Parliament to come and answer questions. So you don't get yourself involved in it. We made Bank of Ghana independent so that they will take a look at the numbers and then decide. I didn't want the Minister of Finance to get involved in foreign exchange management as he was trying to go, and I said, no, stop there. It's a slippery slope. We don't want the management of balance of payments to be done on political basis. But when there is a war, and the crisis we are in is worse than a war, we don't solve it, it's an economic problem, it becomes a social problem, becomes a national crisis, people get onto the streets, and when people get onto the streets, there's no leader that you can talk to. And all of us, the unions, they are also involved. You have SNET, where the minister says, if I don't pay for my SNET contribution, 30% they will charge me. The Minister for Finance, they collect things that they are supposed to, and then they sit on it. And then it's as if it's a largesse. One of the things I was going to suggest is that we are digitalized. If Ghana Revenue collects the revenue, they say this goes to National Health Insurance Authority. They sit on it. It shouldn't. Automatically, it can be disbursed. District Assembly Common Fund, it goes there. This one goes there. If it's for COVID, it goes there. It's not there for the Minister for Finance to chop. Seth was on the line, but here is no longer on the line.
Yes.
Seth came in. He wants more money. He says, earmarked funds, we should stop it. Every economist knows that it's the most inefficient way of distributing money if you earmark it. But we know our people don't respect maintenance. That's why we set up the road fund. Immediately let it go to feed the roads so that they are maintaining the roads. When we say that we're paying for Tema Oil Refinery, we put it there, the money never went. This electricity, we've been paying from it from Kwajuhu, and the debt is increasing. The one that was supposed to repay, we made it a debt prevention. We never put it there. So we passed the laws. Let's respect the laws. Kufuor came in, causing financial loss. We abolished it. Maybe we shouldn't.
Causing financial loss to the state.
So that if you cause financial loss to the state, you become responsible and accountable.
Does this instance amount to causing financial loss to the state?
I don't know. Look, there are two things.
Incompetence.
Incompetence. To cause a loss, it has to be that you have what the lawyers call menstruation. You had an intention to do something wrong. As I said, if Bank of Ghana poured in all this money, which they claim there isn't, because there was a time when the secretary to the bank issued a note that nothing like that was happening. I know that because of the up and downs of that, you need the central bank as your banker to be filling the thing. At the end of the year, if it's getting too big, and as I said, when they realized that they needed to be able to do what they are doing, you call. But the Minister for Finance says, Bank of Ghana is dead. They are going to cut it in half. You come and collect money, and then you say 7 billion, 3 billion is lost. Can you imagine what $3 billion can do? Go to your village. Don't give them $1 billion. Have $1 million. They can build gutters, get solar for the place they meet, for young people to be able to study. What I'm saying is that we should not be too rushed to go to judgment. Let Parliament call the governor to explain what actually happened so that he has his day to tell us what happened. And then if what I suspect is what is the truth, that if they hadn't pumped in that money,
or some printing of money.
If they hadn't pumped it in, that we printed money, but we hadn't, there would have been people on the streets swimming in the president's pool, if he has a pool, like they did in Sri Lanka. That's why I did that. But to do that, you are not yourself. Bank of Ghana belongs to us, the people. Did you consult the shareholders? Or who approved it? So my concern is that let us wait and get all the information and say now when we are moving forward, the laws are there. We don't change our laws because somebody wants to lend money to us. How do we prevent ourselves from getting to a stage where we are to go to the IMF? That's what I thought I wanted to talk about.
Indeed, and that's going to be your rounding up comments as well on this. So you have some minutes to talk about that. Professor Boking, see, there's a reason why, and you elaborated on it earlier, the independence of the Bank of Ghana was entrenched and actually quite central to the financial sector, the sustainability of the financial sector that we find ourselves in. With what's happened now, that has been totally violated, the operational independence of the central bank. What has to be done to ensure that we don't get to this point again?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, on one breath, one could sympathize with the central bank governors because of what we have talked about, fiscal dominance and all of that. There would always be reasons in this country, there would always be reasons, and the rest of them. So I think building forward better and inclusively. If you look at the whole thing, I'll still come back to what I talked about earlier. We've seen an IMF-supported program. We've seen some reforms, but they are not adequate. So urgently, what we needed to do is to initiate certain governance reforms. It's a must. And the reforms we are talking about is not the same as change in government or one party coming, another party going. No. We are looking for reforms that cut across regimes, right? Because merely changing one party from the other necessarily may not engineer this. And I think we need a middle class for all of us to speak out and then say that, look, this is how we have to do it. This is the way forward. And we need organized labor. Look, if you look at the history of UK Labour Party and all of that, I think that we are not using... Look, when the government was talking about debt restructuring, this was our proposal. Let's not the banks negotiate alone. Let's come together. Let's have a domestic creditor committee, right, that sits down with government. Say that you want bailout from us, these are the conditionalities. The IMF is giving you money, there are conditionalities. The World Bank money that will come will have its own conditionalities. That, you know what, we have noticed that given your lifestyle, tax revenue is no longer enough. That's why you're after our savings and our investment.
Yes.
We can bail you out today, but if you don't change this lifestyle, tomorrow you'll come back to us. These are the terms. It happened in Jamaica. But, you know, because we're doing it individually, the government got away with murder. Right.
That's right.
And therefore, we didn't ask for any fiscal reforms in exchange for the lending, because we had essentially lent to the government through the haircuts and all of that. So seriously, and the urgent thing, we can't wait. We can't wait for 2024 to ask for certain governance reforms. It will be too late.
It has to start now.
It has to start now.
Who is not making
We said that, look, if Ghana cannot govern with 40 ministers, forget it. Then leave us alone. Okay.
40 ministers?
What do you need all those ministers to do what? To take a decision? Or to do what? You know, if you appoint one minister, the economy around that minister is beyond just one person. We are not talking about a slave queen economy around all those. No, that's not what we are talking about. You understand? Okay, so the point is that at the end of the day, you put the country on the table and you say, look, the governance cost is heavy. We don't have fiscal space for growth-enhancing spending. So if you, and we think that the way we can solve this is to generate more revenue, that can't be true. Look, if you look at the development path of Malaysia, Singapore, their tax to GDP ratio in the last 25 years, it hasn't been abnormally higher than that of Ghana. Okay, so the narrative that we are in this mess because we are not generating enough revenue is not true. Well, what Ghana has generated in the last 15 years, tax to GDP ratio, if we were to use it prudently and sought for higher value for money, and we're able to deal with corruption, this should not be the development outcome. Certainly not. And there is no guarantee. Look, in the literature, there is no guarantee that if Ghana generates more tax revenue, we'll suddenly become wise. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that, okay, right now we are saying that our tax to GDP ratio is, let's say, 30%. And if we're able to increase it to 18.7%, as is in the IMF program, then suddenly we'll become sensible. And we will spend wisely, and there will be less corruption. No. Not at all. So, and the problem is, look, if you look at procurement, you spoke about procurement. And that is why now we are centralizing everything. We are actually centralizing our decentralization arrangement and all of that. We have gone back. Look at it this way. So you look at the big ticket procurement transactions, more than 70% of them are done through sole sourcing, not competitive tendering. Right. Then look at the interesting thing. You know, those days, if you needed admission for your child, you go and see the headmaster or the headmistress. You understand that? And then maybe thank you, not just in West, right? Maybe here and there. Then we said we'll solve that problem. So we have centralized placement. We have actually, what that we've done is to centralize the corruption. We didn't remove it. It didn't solve the problem. Look, right now, what is, you should be concerned. You see, you know, free senior high school, we like the law, but it's not working. We should be concerned. We said, let's invest in people. We should be concerned the people who are exiting the free senior high school and entering the universities. Okay, you know, today, even the politicians themselves are not comfortable sending their children to Fantipim and the others, right? They are all sending them to the private schools, right? Because those they wish to cherish Achimota and Fantipim and the rest of them. Well, I didn't get a chance to go there. I would have loved. But of course, with the aggregate I got, I'm sure they would have to set up another school for me somewhere else or something, right? Okay, but we are destroying certain, things that we cherish. I hope you understand that.
Yes.
And we've politicized Ghana Education Service. They were going to do that with the universities, with the public universities bill, and the rest of them. Why are we doing that to ourselves? It's not helpful. So I think that when I talked about that, if you look at the development literature, it takes a long time. Consistency. We talk about macroeconomic stability. It's not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. That is the dominant school of thought in economics. That for development to happen, you first need to guarantee macroeconomic stability. You check the data. Since 1992, Ghana hasn't moved beyond macroeconomic stability. We've had relative macroeconomic stability and then instability, and then we come back here and there. The cost of restoring macroeconomic stability now is so huge. Now, how do we move from here? It's good the IMF program has come. How do we build on that? But to make it sustainable, we need to initiate serious governance reforms. The governance structures must support. And as it stands now, we don't have that. And I think that we need to start that quite quickly. And I'm hoping that the president will do the needful. You know, there has to be a leadership response.
which we haven't seen as yet.
I haven't seen that. It's very important. You see, you needed to do that to generate confidence. You know, sometimes when we talk about the economy, we have the imaginary economy in people's mind. We have the technical economy. We have the economy on the ground, right? But building confidence in the economy may not require building a bridge or doing something very major. There are the little things that generate hope, that rallies everybody behind. And as it stands now, we are not seeing that. And I think we need to look at the governance issues. I think at some point that you talked about the constitution and all of that. I think we need to go back to the basics. We need to, and then also seriously reduce the governance cost. If you reduce the governance cost and you're able to rake in the savings of about 40%, that's fiscal space. Fiscal space will not be conferred on you by the IMF or whatever. We need to create it. You create that also through that expenditure cut, and that expenditure cut will not hurt growth. In economics, we have some expenditure cut that will hurt growth. We have other expenditure cut that will promote growth. The kind of expenditure cut we are talking about are the ones that will promote growth, free up fiscal space. Then you can invest in the growth-enhancing areas. Now, we can't do that. Look, if you want to go to Cape Coast today, and you set off in the morning, that will be all that you will do for the day. And traffic will take all your time. You know, economic activity is also about movement. Okay, once you restrict movement, you are inhibiting growth and the rest of them. Look at the hours people spend in traffic just to get to work. And it's not sustainable.
In fact, the interlinkages and all the challenges that you have actually
and then finally, because private sector is the engine of growth, look, we need to look at our tax environment. Look, it is never true that the more you tax your people, the more you see growth. It's not true. Look, in the other countries, like the Scandinavian countries, where they have high tax rate, in Europe, maybe VAT rate average 21%, and the rest of the income levels are high. But if you have a government that is efficient in the delivery of public services, if that government is taking so much from you, you may not complain. But if you have a government that is inefficient, okay, and that government takes so much from businesses and households, and that government is inefficient in the redistribution of that, then there's a problem. We cannot allow that to continue. And I think that is where we need to. There are too many taxes. I've said that our VAT, let's merge the VAT and the straight levies, peg it at below 18%. And then again, there are too many back doors. Look, in Ghana, sometimes we think that we are so smart. You put your standard corporate tax rate at 25%, then you introduce growth and sustainability levy, and so many. Right now in Ghana, whether you are making loss or profit, you are paying taxes. When you do that, you are actually suffocating the private sector. That is the engine of growth. Bear this in mind. The UN is telling us that Ghana's population by 2040 will be 45 million. By 2040. And that population, 58% of that population, they will be less than 30 years. And the World Bank is telling us that between now and 2040, Ghana needs to create 10 million jobs, especially in the formal wage economy. You have to look at all these statistics, right, which will inform what you do now and for the foreseeable future. You have to feel for this country, you know. When you do the modeling, when you look at all these things and you look at what Galamsey is doing to our future, and you see the rural-urban migration, you know, food inflation, depending on where you buy food from, is higher. Food inflation in the Northeast is almost 80%. You see the regional differences. It's more expensive living in the rural areas in some places in Ghana today than the urban areas. Because the rural ecosystem, with water as its embodiment, is being destroyed. Through Galamsey, look, the Reuters did their work in 20s and told us that gold smuggling from Africa was costing the continent more than $15 billion. And given that Ghana is a major producer of gold, will certainly be well represented in that sample size, right? And the rest of them. So if you see the Galamsey, we are losing everything because this is illegal, right?
Indeed.
We are losing the tax revenue from that and all of that. Look, you put all this in. How do you think we can have a future if we don't take certain steps now? We will be so unique to think that we could continue on this path and we'll certainly get a different outcome. No.
We certainly
countries that developed, they were intentional.
Indeed. Let's put our hands together for our guests. I'll take some few comments from the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. as well, partnering us to do this. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I want to start from the tax issue that you just mentioned. The government had forgotten that it's the private sector that is the engine of growth. Now, if you look at the interest rate, we are competing with the government. And usually we do that, the government has an upper hand. For the first time in the history of this country, that even banks are restructuring their loans in such a way that they make provision when they are even saving with the country, with their own country. It means that even borrowing from the private sector is much, much better than even borrowing from the central bank. Now, the tax issue that you just mentioned, they have forgotten that it's cyclical. If you tax us so much, because monies that we deposit in the bank is out of our excesses in our spending. And so if we have excess, we deposit them in the bank. When we overtax, we don't have the money that we deposit in the bank for the government even to borrow. And so once you go there with your might, you cut out the private sector. And the government has also forgotten that we are in a competitive environment and that we're in a global world where other people are borrowing low. For the private sector to be competitive, we can't borrow at that rate. We cannot be taxed so much. If we are being taxed on consumption tax, if you are a minister or whoever it is, decide that we should be taxed on consumption tax, then it means that we have not seen anything. Anybody at all can tax when you are consuming. You get the revenue. But we have to be proactive as a nation to look at areas that we have to tax, to prohibit some spending, and areas that we also have to tax that will also help the economic growth. We need to look at them together. I think that we need to look at the legal framework of our country. Go back and look at the Constitution. Are we empowering the government so much? We are talking about democracy. Have we ever sat down to look at where government gets their funding to run their parties? They go and borrow money from other people. They need to reposition them. And whether they are even competent to hold those positions, we don't even know. As a nation, if we want to look at it, let's look at how this democracy, we are going to look at it. Whether to fund government, and so that whoever does anything, we hold them responsible. How are we going to work alongside with this? When a party comes in with our democracy, Party A comes in with this manifesto. Party B comes in with a different manifesto. We need to have a consistent national policy. The national development planning, what are they doing? Are the manifestos in consonance with what they do, or we come in with our own manifestos? Mm-hmm. There are basic things that we need to look at it, even if it's coming from Party A or Party B. Education, some key sectors, driving sectors of the economy, must be basic for everybody. When you are coming with your manifesto, you have that one, and you add something to it. And so that will be consistent in whatever we do. I don't think that is a good thing. For the first time, we are enslaving our youth because we are leaving the country. For the first time, people are leaving good jobs and they're running away. It's bad than those days when they were even fiscally enslaved, because those days they were taking some money from them before they give them out. But this time, they are going on their own. People we have trained as a nation, we spend free education monies on them, instead of them to stay and then give us back what they have earned. They are running away as a nation. I think that we have failed.
Right.
Going forward, I think that we need to sit down as a nation,
right,
and look at the issues that we have spoken as fundamental. Mm-hmm. And if, for the last one, we have leaders from all the constituencies that we select to come into parliament, and we are saying that our leadership has a problem, then as a nation we have a problem, because the sample size of the entire population. And so if we are picking leaders who we think they are doing very well, be it an MP, be it a CEO, be it whatever, it is our own choice, a sample size of the population, that we have picked them. It means that we have a fundamental problem as a nation, that we need to go deep and identify them and then work with it together in order to be able to achieve the success that we are yearning for. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And that would lead us to the final comments from our distinguished panel members as well as we round this all-important conversation. I will start off with you, Professor Kwame Pianim, in a minute.
Listening to the economists and the problem that we have that will take us at least 30 years to solve, I don't think 0.1% of Ghanaians are aware of what you are talking about. Because I don't understand everything that you are saying. So I assume that a lot of Ghanaians don't know what is happening. If we did, we'll be angry. So these things should trickle down. I don't know how Uncle Pianim and Professor will, or all of you, will communicate to Ghanaians about what is happening. Because it looks as if we don't know. And then also, when I was minister, I set up a department called Ghana Innovation Research Commercialization Center at CSIR, where we went round the universities and cataloged all the things that they were doing, things that could be commercialized.
Yeah.
But again, we leave and everything.
That from University of Ghana.
You remember? Everything breaks down. And then, sorry, my last comment about Adubia, the things that you said about the local content. You see, when we are doing something, we must think about Ghana. We are happy, we have automobile assembly plants, but I don't think Ghana is gaining anything from it. Because these companies know that by 2040, 2050, they will stop building internal combustion engines. They are all going electric.
Yes.
So it is good to set up these factories here so we can go on with this. And the good thing is for them is that we guarantee the purchase of a quantity of the vehicles. That's why I know. The government has guaranteed that they will buy a quantity of the vehicles that are assembled here. And so look, talking about local content, that is why we started, we started this CNC Machine Tool Center where we produce spare parts, where we will produce machine parts, where we could reverse engineer things.
Right.
But then these things have all been stopped, and the rethinking. The private sector is the engine of growth. But you see, if the engine is on the floor and it's not connected to the vehicle, and the private sector has no money, no skills, no technology, then it becomes very difficult.
Yes.
We need to equip, empower, give money to the private sector so that they can do their job.
Thank you so much. And the Kwame Pianim, we cannot keep doing the same things and expect different results. That's insanity. It's in your presentation that never came. But final word on this in a minute before we go.
On the insanity.
Doing the same things and expecting different results. What has to change in a minute before we go?
In a minute.
Please.
Ghanaians have to change. Me, I don't believe in changing the constitution. It gives people the feeling that we are doing something when we are doing nothing. The constitution we have is the best in terms of protecting human rights, is the best in terms of promoting Ghanaian entrepreneurship. It's putting it well. There are tinkerings we can do, going down to making the district assemblies an important part of it. There are certain things we say that is too strong an executive. The president doesn't have the same power as an elected district chief executive.
Right.
Who has executive powers, legislative powers. The president doesn't have that. The president needs to go to parliament to pass laws. It's as Ghanaians, he has to go to the council of state to do certain things, to elect certain people in consultation with or on the advice of. Nobody has told me what you need to give to the council of state for them to do that. So if we as Ghanaians don't change and we continue to do things the same way, they say insanity is when you continue the same thing and you expect different results. It won't happen. What we need now, is to reset the button.
Right.
And resetting the button means at the bottom there, we have to start from there. Not just talk. We've been talking about restructuring the economy donkey years. We've never worked it. Raising money through taxation, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
You can only do it when you get to a certain level.
Right.
So what we need to do that is re-examine expenditures. It means you take a look at it and say, this is the money that is coming through tax revenue.
Right.
And this is all I have. Let's spend it, as we said, making Ghanaians feel safe, and then for education and this and that. At Lewis told us during Nkrumah's time, countries grow fast where the people feel safe
Right.
to save, savings, and invest. Which Ghanaian businessman feels safe to invest, to save here and invest? So we have to start that. And then once we start that, then probably we'll get onto the right path. But consistently, so what I wanted to give to you, the slide,
Yes.
just the one with the anchor and the dolphin. The Italians, the Romans used to say, festina lente, make haste slowly.
Right.
In Ghana, we say, kahunabra, or go through slowly. So if we have that part, then we finish.
Great.
And he just says that slowly, we need to grow slowly and steadily. And if we are growing slowly and steadily without going through this stop-go,
Right.
that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And if that's the way to go, you need to create jobs for the young people, $10,000 to create a good industrial job. You have 700,000 young people joining. The youth are coming. We don't have enough money. We need to attract money from outside. And that money, it's estimated $400 billion is out there looking for places to go. If you are not safe, Ghana, we are lucky. We are safe. It's safe and peaceful. But our environment
It's not.
is bad. It's getting worse. And crazy people were saying they were going to fight. They want to bring the geopolitical proxy fighting so that the West will finance Africans to kill one another. We
Thank
don't
you.
want that. The causes of the root causes, I'll say this and I'll
Yes.
finish. The root causes of instability in Africa is election related. Let the Electoral Commission make sure that they regulate the political parties so that they are democratic and accountable. You cannot expect a political party that is opaque, non-accountable, by winning an election to become accountable to the people. It will not happen.
Right.
And that's what said. A young friend of mine told me, African countries, Ghana, if people give us money free money, it won't help us develop. 50% of the money will be stolen because we are thieves. The other 50% will be wasted because we are incompetent. And until we solve these problems and start investing in people, having the right policies, we are wasting time.
Thank you so much. And in 30 seconds, Professor Godfrey.
I don't know whether I have anything more
Yes.
sensible to add after Mr. Pianim, but I believe that...
So there was a question about who has to be held responsible for this violation of the,
Yeah,
the Bank of Ghana's
I had heard the
operational
view previously that from professional point of view, I felt that the governor should have resigned. I have a soft side towards the governors. I know especially the two deputies and all of that. I spoke to one of them last week. I said, look, I have a strong position about these results, and I'm not going to hide that. And I think I'm disappointed. Of course, we can say the fiscal dominance and all of that, but you see, we have to build institutions, operational independence. You need strong people who can say no.
to the finance minister.
So
of the
if you
government.
fail to say no, you have to go. If you feel that the pressure is too much, you know what? Do Ghanaian the needful. Resign. Put your terms there. You would have set a good precedence, and you'll be amazed the signal effect. And I can tell you, and I'm sure the governor probably would have maybe thought about this a couple of years ago or so and all of that. And let me say this because if you listen to the governor in the last 2.5 years, you could see he has not been happy with how the fiscal side had been managed. But you know what? You stay too long. Now it's too late.
Now it's too late. You can say the same as well, Dr. Nyonyanta?
Well, I will still maintain my position that this nation will move when we have the right leader. But the right leader will be somebody with integrity, and he will be sure whoever he appoints as his minister, he or she should be somebody who has the same integrity, because this country has come to its knees because the leadership is not good. That's all.
Dr. Nyahota Maklo, thank you very much. Professor Boko Broken, thank you. Kwame Pianim, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I've
And
learned
also Professor Kwabena Frimpong-Boateng, thank you very much. Please, let's put our hands together for all of them. Thank you. And this has been a very, very engaging, thought-provoking conversation, I must say, that we've had over the last 3 hours. And we are even wishing that it never stops. But just as Professor Kwabena Frimpong-Boateng said, our commitment here at Media General is to put out such information so that people will know what is happening. So this is not going to be the last. We would have another one again and again and again, and all of you, together with our viewers, are invited to every one of those occasions so that we will get to know what is going on. Then it would help us all take the necessary decisions. So on behalf of the 3 business team and the management and board of Media General, I want to say thank you to you, our audience in studio as well. Thank you for coming. And Dr. Edward Anienchi, thank you very much, is the leader of the Pension Bondholders Forum. Dr. Edward Anienchi, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. And to you all as well, thank you very much for making the time to be here. The conversation continues in your offices, in your homes, because that's where the real economy is. On behalf of the rest of the team, thank you for joining us. I am Alfredo Conce.
And let us thank TV3.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
TV3 for taking on this role. Not all the media houses are doing it. On behalf of people like me and Ghanaians, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So yes, we call it a day, and please stay tuned in to all Media General platforms. These conversations will continue. Thank you very much. It's been 3 hours already.